Welcome back to the Small Business Toolbox, where we look at the nuts and bolts of self-employed life in the UK. I'm Andy Mack, and today we're going to set up some web hosting for our brand new WordPress website. Please watch parts 1 to 3 of this series before watching this video, because it explains some of the fundamental concepts that we're going to be going into in this video and in later videos. Links are in the description below. If you remember back to part 1, web hosting is where your website is physically stored. So having good web hosting is critical to the smooth running of your website. If your current website is slow, it's probably your web host to blame. As per usual with all of these videos, I'm aiming them at business owners who are a little bit tech savvy. If you've set up your own websites before, you might find this video a little bit basic. Likewise, if you're a complete technophobe, then you might struggle with this. I would encourage everyone to have a try at making a website for themselves though. Everyone's minds are wired differently, and what one person finds easy, another person might find hard. We've got a lot to cover in this video. Let me take you through what we're going to go over. We're going to start off by creating your actual web hosting account using SiteGround. We're going to cover pointing your new domain name over to your new web hosting account. We're going to set up an FTP account so that we can actually upload stuff to your website. And then finally, we're going to create the database and email accounts that you're going to need for your WordPress installation. So lots to do. Let's crack on and get this hosting up and running. So I'm going to use SiteGround for my web hosting. They are really good for WordPress web hosting especially. Get really good reviews. It's nice and fast, and it's just a hosting provider that I trust. If you want to use a different hosting provider, absolutely feel free. But I'm going to show you everything on SiteGround and how it all works in relation to their control panel and all that sort of thing. So if you want to use SiteGround, if you go to siteground.com/go/business toolbox, then SiteGround will know that you're coming via me, and I'll get a couple of pennies just as a thank you, but it'll not cost you any extra. And it just helps me to make more free content on this channel that will hopefully help you. So when you go to that link, it should take you to a page that looks a bit like this. And we've got the choice of this Startup, Grow Big and Go Geek package. Now, if all you're doing is setting up a really basic single website, you can probably just get away with this one website, the Startup package, £2.95 a month. And that allows up to 10,000 visits a month to your website or thereabouts, which should be more than enough for most people. But obviously, if you're really wanting to create some giant website, you might want to consider like the Grow Big package that lets you have unlimited websites on a single account. So if you're going to be setting up more than one website, then I would go for this one. And then we've also got the Go Geek, which is, again, unlimited websites and just a higher monthly number of visits to the account. And by the way, all we're doing here is setting up bog standard web hosting. You'll notice on SiteGround they've got a few different options for web hosting. They've got just your bog standard one, they've got WordPress hosting, they've got WooCommerce hosting. As far as I can gather, these are exactly the same as this. It's just this happens to have WordPress already installed, and this has WordPress and WooCommerce already installed, I think. I would rather show you the manual way of doing it on the basic web hosting package, because then if something goes wrong, you're more likely to know how to fix it. So I think it's good practice just to know how to do this absolutely from the ground up. And plus, most of the stuff I'll show you on this will apply no matter what web host that you're using. So as I say, siteground.com/go/business toolbox, and it should take you straight to this page, which is the page you need to be on. And I'll assume you're going for the startup one, so just click Get Plan. And I'm assuming you've already registered a domain name via 123reg, which is who I prefer to use for domain names, and I covered that in a different video, link in the description. But if you want, you can register the domain through SiteGround as well. It's completely up to you. I prefer to have my domain name separate from my hosting provider. I just prefer not to have all my eggs in one basket. So if you've already got your domain, click I already have a domain. Type your domain name in there. Click proceed. And then it's going to take you to this page where you fill out all of your account information. So the main thing that you're going to need here is an email address. And I would suggest just using the Gmail account that you have probably already set up if you've watched the earlier videos. And you're going to need a password. And this password is going to be your holy grail of passwords. So this needs to be really secure. A random combination of numbers and letters and symbols and all sorts. Make it a really complicated password, because if anyone gets into this account, they've got access to everything. They can take your website down if they get access to this account. Put in all of your user information down the bottom here. Obviously put in payment information, your credit card details and whatnot. Your hosting period. I'm just going to show you it on 12 months, but I would suggest going for the longest hosting possible for maybe a 24 or 36 month contract, because it's heavily discounted for your initial order and it tells you what the regular price is there. But that's obviously completely up to you. I would suggest getting the SG site scanner. It's kind of like an antivirus thing for your website. It's only £15.60 a year plus VAT, and it's just a bit of extra peace of mind for your website, and it'll pick up any malicious code and stuff like that if anything nasty happens to your website. So I would go with that. Click all your boxes to confirm, pay, and then that's your web hosting account up and running. Then you should get an email, something along the lines of this, from SiteGround to confirm your account is all live. If you remember back to the very first video in this series, one of the slightly more complicated things we talked about was pointing your domain name over to your web hosting using a thing called DNS. Well, that's the thing we're going to do now, and don't worry, it's dead easy. If you've registered your domain name through SiteGround, then you don't need to do this. It'll all happen automatically. This is only if you've registered your domain name separately. And for me, I'm doing this through 123reg. If you scroll down in that email, you should see a little section that says something along the lines of, don't forget to update your DNS settings. And then a couple of lines of text that give you the address of the SiteGround DNS servers. That's a bit of information we need. For me, it looks something along the lines of ns1.gukm2.siteground.biz or whatever. It might be different for you, so don't copy what I'm doing. In a moment, we're going to copy and paste that information out of that email and into 123reg, so keep it handy. If for some reason your welcome email doesn't include that information, then you're going to need to get it from your SiteGround control panel, and I'll show you how to do that later on. For now though, I'm going to assume you've registered your domain through 123reg, and that's where we need to change the name servers. So just go to 123reg.co.uk, click on the control panel link, log in with the information you've already set up if you have done it through 123reg, and then within here, all you need to do is click on domains to find the domain that you've registered. Obviously, if you've got more than one domain name, just scroll through the list and find the one that you need to change. In which case, for me, it's smallbusinesstoolbox.uk, and I'm going to click Manage. Now, an important thing to mention here is that if you've bought more than one domain name for your company, say for example you've bought .uk and .co.uk, you need to make the decision which domain name do you want to be your primary domain name, because that's going to be the one that we're going to point to your SiteGround web hosting. And for me, smallbusinesstoolbox.uk is going to be my primary domain. So that's where I'm going to do everything and set the website up and everything. I'm going to then just point a forwarder from the .co.uk to the .uk domain. And I'll show you how to do that in a minute. But all you need to do here, scroll down a little bit, you'll see change name servers. So click on that. Delete out the name servers that are already in these boxes. Go into your welcome email from SiteGround. Copy the address of name server 1. and paste it into there. And then back to your email, copy the address of name server 2, paste it into there, and click update. And that's going to update this domain name to point it to SiteGround. Now, sometimes it can take a little while for that change to take effect. Sometimes it happens straight away. It does say it can take up to 48 hours. Normally it's same day, but just be prepared that this change could take a couple of days. So if you're in a rush to get a website up and running, bear in mind that you could have a couple of days of waiting after making this change here. But normally it's pretty quick. Once you've done that, back to your 123reg main control panel thing. I'm going to show you how I'm going to forward my .co.uk domain to the .uk domain. And I'm doing that just with this web forwarding option here. So click on that. This only applies if you've bought 2 domain names for the same business. If you've only bought one, then you can skip this bit. So find your domain name in your list here if you've got lots of domains. And all I'm going to do, I'm going to forward this .co.uk to the .uk. And to do that, all I do is click add. And in here, I'm just going to paste in the main domain name, which is smallbusinesstoolbox.uk, and click confirm. And then once that's done, you should see the confirmation at the top that the forwarding's set up. You should see it's a 301 type of redirect from the .co.uk to the .uk. And all that means is if anyone visits that address, it'll automatically take them to that address. I'm not actually going to be using that address for anything. All I'm doing is kind of reserving that domain name. But I do want it set up so that if anyone does accidentally go to the .co.uk domain, they'll be forwarded to the .uk domain. So that's everything we need to do on the 123reg side, really. Other than paying your bills for renewing your domain names, you should never really need to touch this again. Now, if you visited your web address before changing the name servers over to SiteGround, it should look something like this if you've done it through 123reg. It should just be a 123reg like holding page for your domain. But once the DNS change that you've made has replicated around the internet and it's all working, you should now see something that looks more like this. And this is SiteGround's holding page for a website that's not set up yet, basically. So if you see this, then that means everything's ready to rock, and that's probably a good thing. If you see something that looks more like this and it points to 123reg, it means that your DNS hasn't updated yet. If it's still looking like this after a couple of days, you might want to check with 123reg support to make sure that you've done the DNS updates correctly. We're now going to log into the SiteGround control panel to get all of your hosting stuff up and running and ready so that you can install WordPress in the next video. So you need to go over to your email that you got from SiteGround, and you should have that little link in that email that says user control panel or whatever, and you just click on that link and sign in with your SiteGround username and password that you've already set up. If your original email from SiteGround doesn't have that link in it, then just go to siteground.co.uk and just click the login box at the top right, and you should get a little login that looks similar to this, and just log in with your SiteGround username and password. Now, just to slightly confuse matters, SiteGround have literally just released a brand new client area control panel. And I don't have access to the new version of that yet. I'm still on the old cPanel control panel. And I did have a whole video prepared on showing you how to configure everything through cPanel, but there's no real point in showing you that anymore because it's all changed. So I'm going to show you it on a demo control panel. But just bear in mind, I haven't seen the new live system yet. I've only seen it through the demo account. Basically, new users are going straight onto the new platform, old users are getting migrated across at some point. So your login page might look something more along the lines of this. So again, just log in with your username and password that you set up when you first created your SiteGround account. Then once you're logged in, just click the Setup Site button, and that should then take you to this where you've got Start New Website or Migrate Website. You're not going to do either of those. You're just going to do skip and create empty site. You see this bottom option here? Just click that. If you do happen to click the Start New Website option, you'll see that you've got options for WordPress, WordPress and WooCommerce and Weebly and all sorts of other things. That basically pre-installs WordPress for you, but I don't want you to do that because you're not going to learn how WordPress works properly if you let the system install it for you. So I'm going to show you how to do it the manual way, and I think that's a much better way of getting your head around how the whole back end of WordPress works. So again, ignore all of these options. It's the skip and create empty site option that you want at the bottom there. I briefly mentioned this when you were setting the hosting up in the first place. If it does give you the option for SG Site Scanner, do add it on because it's kind of antivirus for your website. It's definitely worth having. If you already signed up and paid for that as part of setting your hosting account up, you shouldn't have to then pay for it again. So I'm assuming it'll just be on your account. Click Finish and that should be your web hosting up and running. So I'm going to quickly take you through all the things that we need to do in the demo control panel now. So just click on the Websites tab at the top. And you can see here on the demo control panel, I've actually got two websites. I've got one with a pre-installed WordPress installation. Ignore that. It shouldn't look like that. And we've got one empty site, which is this one here. So all we're going to do on the empty site that you should have created, just click on Manage. Within here, just double check that you've got SG Site Scanner enabled. It should be showing as active on your account. If it's not, get in touch with SiteGround support and check what's happened there. But if you paid for it as part of your initial order, you should see SG Site Scanner as active. Ignore Site Builder, we're not going to use that. We're going to do Cloudflare in a later video. We're going to do SSL in a later video. We don't need a dedicated IP. So now just click on Site Tools. And this is your main new control panel for SiteGround. You can see your name servers here. You know, I mentioned earlier on, if you didn't get the name servers as part of the email that you received from SiteGround, this is where you get the name servers from. It's telling you the IP address of your website. You shouldn't really need that for anything. You've got pin tools at the top here. You can just basically add and remove common things that you use all the time just by clicking the little pin button. I'm not going to show you that because it's just a demo account. But let's start off by getting your FTP account up and running. So just click on Site on the left there and FTP accounts. And we're going to create an FTP account just for the purposes of this demo. I'm going to call it FTP-Andy. Use the password generator to create a password for your account. Copy that password to the clipboard and then paste it into your magic password file that you've got with all your different passwords in because you're going to need that. So you've got your FTP username and your FTP password. You're also going to need to know your FTP host name, and that's this one that's shown over on the right here. So make sure you've copied that information here to your list of passwords and whatnot because we're going to need that later on. And that's all there is to it. Click Create. The next thing that we're going to do is set up your email accounts, and we're going to set up 3 separate email accounts. Just click on Email and Accounts, and we're going to set up a contact one. So this is going to be a generic kind of sales or contact email address or info. So you pick whatever you want. I'm going to just call it contact. Again, use the password generator and copy that to the clipboard and paste it into your magic password document. Click Create. We're then also going to create 2 email addresses for WordPress. One of them is going to be an admin account and the other one's going to be a user account. So I'm going to call the admin one admin-Andy. Again, use the password generator, copy it, and copy that password and that email address to your magic password document. Click Create. And then one more, we're going to create the user one. I'm just going to call it user-Andy. Again, password generator, copy, and create. So if you scroll down, you can now see we've got our contact email address and we've got an admin and we've got a user email address, and you should have note of the passwords for all of those. If you want to check your email, by the way, you can put all this complicated information into an email client, or the easier way to check your email is just to go into webmail. If you just go on the three little dots there, you've got the option there, log into webmail, and you would just click on that and then just log in with the email address and password for that email account that you've literally just set up. Dead straightforward. I would always advise that you put a quota on an email account. By default, this is set it to half a gig, 512 meg. I would normally go a bit lower than that, like 250 meg or thereabouts. Your email account, you don't want it getting ridiculously big. And it just means if you run into any problems with suddenly getting bombarded with spam, you're not going to run the risk that your email account's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger forever. Eventually it will start rejecting email. You just click on the little dots here and you've got change quota. And obviously that's also where you would change your email password as well if you've forgotten it or you've lost your password document or whatever. And if you want to completely get rid of that email account and delete everything that's in it, then that's where you would get rid of it. Straightforward stuff. The final thing that we're going to do is set up your database that you're going to need for your WordPress installation. We're going to do that using this thing called MySQL, or MySQL as it gets called. So click on MySQL, dead straightforward, click Create Database, done. And now we need to create a user that has access to that database. So just click Create User. And then click this Create User button here. And that's the user created. The final thing that we need to do is tell the database that that user has permission to use that database. So all you have to do, go into databases. Here's your database that you created before. And you see here where it says add new user. Just click on that. Here's your user account that you've just already created. You want to make sure that it's got all privileges and click confirm. Now, the 3 bits of information you're going to need to copy and paste from this into your magic password document. The first thing is the database name. So copy that name into your reference document. That is your database name. The other thing that we need to copy is your database username. So click on the users tab and it's this one here. So copy that into your reference document. And the other thing that we need to do is get the password for that. And the password did flash up before, but you probably missed it because it disappeared quite quickly. So all we'll do, we'll reset the password. Click on the 3 dots on the right, change password, use the password generator, click the generate button, copy. You've copied that to the clipboard, paste that into your reference document. This is your database user password. So just click confirm. And that should be us ready to rock. Feel free to have a look around all of the stuff in this control panel, but don't change anything unless you understand what it does. Definitely at the moment, don't add Cloudflare, don't add SSL. I'm going to show you that in a future video. This is also where you're going to get things like your site statistics from if we don't end up using Google Analytics, which is another whole separate topic. But that should be you ready to rock. We're ready to install WordPress. So it looks a bit scary, but it's not that scary once you get your head around it. So just to do a bit of a recap, because we've covered a lot of information here, and if you've missed any bits, it's going to make installing WordPress a little bit tricky. So if we can just run through everything and make sure we've not missed anything. I'm going to assume that you've used 123reg for your domain names and SiteGround for your web hosting, which is what I've showed you in the first kind of parts to this. Obviously, if you're using a different provider, then things might work differently. But you should have a 123reg username and password to get access to controlling your domain names. You should have a SiteGround username and password to get access to your web hosting account. By now you should have changed your DNS so that your domain names on 123reg are now pointing to your SiteGround web hosting. You should have an FTP username, password and a host name. You should have your contact @ email address and password. You should have your admin email address and password, and you should have your user email address and password. And remember, you can make your contact one anything you want, like contact or sales or info, whatever you like. And your admin and your user ones, you're going to try and keep those secret and make them non-guessable names. And then finally, you're going to have your database name, username, and password. And for all of these, every single username and password that we're talking about here, you need to keep them really safe, really secure, and there need to be proper, unguessable, secure passwords. If you make it just password, I guarantee your website will be hacked within 5 minutes. So there we go. You should now have your web hosting up and running, ready for your WordPress installation. In the next part, it's the big one. We're going to install WordPress and get it all up and running, and at the end of it, you'll have a functioning website. In the meantime, if you've got any questions or comments, pop them down below. Take care, folks, and I shall see you next time.